we have not yet put together a liturgical calendar. But when we do, you'll be able to celebrate several times a week.
Or a day.
Or a day.
Like today. 50 some odd steps and entering the greater community.
Entering the greater community, yeah. Well, here we are. Well, I know this is a very special opportunity we have to be together. For those of you who are gathered here in the sanctuary with us, and for those of you who could join us from afar, I wanted to take this opportunity to impart some important things to you. Because if you're going to learn about a greater reality and actually enter into it, you have to be able to prepare. And prepare requires certain kinds of old practices be replaced with new practices. So learning how to practice something that has never been taught in the world before is a real challenge. And I feel whatever I and we can do to assist you in developing this practice and doing it successfully is very, very important. Otherwise, who are you going to call? So here we are. And Patricia and I are going to talk about practice today. And this is the first of a series of sessions that we'd like to have with you around practice and life and the experience of the presence itself. So we'll begin today with practice. For this I will need notes. This session is called The Gift and the Problem of Practice. And we give this gift and this problem to you because your life is important. For reasons that will be beyond your understanding and my understanding. It is because you were sent into the world for a purpose. And that purpose is connected to the greater coordination that represents God's work both within this world and throughout the universe, far beyond our reckoning. And your life is important too because you are responding to God's new message for the world. Which means heaven is counting upon you to respond, to prepare, and to engage with your greater role as it becomes revealed to you over time. That means that I, as the messenger, and we, as the assembly here, and the angelic assembly itself, needs you to prepare and to become a serious student and to be successful in your preparation. And by successful, I do not mean perfect or to achieve perfection, but instead a high level of functionality, clarity, simplicity, power, and honesty. So it's important for you to know here that in this practice, you are not doing this for yourself alone. This is not for your happiness or edification or even to relieve you fully of suffering, because the practice itself will present you with new problems. And you can suffer over those too. Here we are investing in your development and in your future. For our futures are tied together. Therefore, we practice for ourselves and for one another and for those who have sent us into the world. If you can hold this understanding, you will find the time, you will find the motivation, you will find the commitment. And it will be a very different experience for you. So practice of this nature is clearly a gift. It is the means by which you can reform and redirect your life through developing a deeper awareness, a consistent practice, and by building, step by step, brick by brick, a foundation for a greater life, a new life. For to have this kind of knowledge and wisdom will mean a new life for you. I know many of you are beginning to move into that new life and feel the movement itself and sense the change in direction and emphasis for you, which is entirely natural, which is coming from within you, as if that silent hand were moving you from within. This is a gift of practice now also because of the condition of the world. There is still enough freedom, affluence, and stability in the world and your life to give you this opportunity. And these are things which may not be available to us in the future. So life holds great windows of opportunity, and this is one of them. It's not something you want to postpone or take lightly. That this window is open for you now. If we could but see what is coming over the horizon clearly, you would know this to be true. And the third thing is we have open world communication networks that allows the worldwide community of the new message to grow, to develop, to nourish itself, and to become a force for good in the world. These networks may not be available to us in the future, may not be free, may not be open. Life's great opportunities come and are gone. Never think they're always available to you. That is because your life is in coordination with other forces that are moving other people, other beings within this world and beyond. So knowledge becomes activated within you at these kinds of times. Become restless, anticipatory. You sense that things are changing. How many of you have felt this? Just a few. More than a few. Okay, then. Hands up. Okay.
That's our signature experience, right?
Right. Standing at the precipice. But we have a problem with practice. The problem with practice is that you can only practice. You can't stop practicing. You can only determine what you will practice and what it will serve. You're practicing all the time. And you're demonstrating the effects of your practice. Though you may try to conceal that, put on a good show in the world, you're still demonstrating the effects of your practice. You're demonstrating these things and practicing, and you cannot change it. Just like you cannot change the movement of time, or the meaning of your mortality. So while the gift of great practice is now being given to you, you have this problem. This problem is an amazing thing. And I would like to read to you from Steps to Knowledge, which one of the steps that Aisha reviewed for us this evening. Step 80, which is I can only practice. read it for us? Just the first two paragraphs. Yeah.
You can only practice. Life is practice. We are merely redirecting your practice so that it serves you and so that it may serve others. You practice all the time, repetitively, over and over. You practice confusion. You practice judgment. You practice projection of blame. You practice guilt. You practice disassociation, and you practice inconsistency. You strengthen your judgments by continuing to exert them. You strengthen your uncertainties by continuing to emphasize them. You practice your self-hatred by continuing to influence it. If you look at your life objectively, but for a moment, you will see that your whole life is practice. Therefore, you will practice regardless of whether you have a curriculum for your benefit or not. Therefore, we give the curriculum, which you may now practice. It will replace the practices that have confused and belittled you, that have conflicted you, and that have led you into error and into danger. We give you a greater practice, so you will not practice those things which undermine your value and your certainty. Step 80, I can only practice.
Going through steps of knowledge, it's so easy to pass through a step like that and never really take it to heart. And that's why we do steps more than once. I don't think it's possible for you to plumb the depths of steps one time through. Every one of them is like a trapdoor that you can fall through. And they'll reveal their secrets to you when you're ready. When you're ready. Yeah. So the problem of practice is that we can't escape it. There's no time out when you stop practicing. And whatever you practice, you reinforce, particularly if you practice it habitually. And of course, most of what we're talking about here is very unconscious. You're simply doing it. The mind repeats its patterns over and over again. It goes to familiar places. It dwells in familiar ideas. It recycles old information in preferred ways. It projects its fear into the future and its fantasy. It recalls the past in its own versions. And while it does this, it's strengthening itself and reinforcing itself. So here the old adage that practice makes perfect is really not correct. What's correct is that practice makes permanent. And you can see this permanence in people whose ideas, beliefs, and fixed view of the world is so solid that nothing will change it. Even the presence of the angelic assembly will not change it. The mind is like concrete. You have to keep stirring it to keep it viscous and pliable and usable. If you let it sit for too long, it becomes hardened and you can't do anything with it. It becomes the prison house in which we live, confusing us, tormenting us, holding us back. For without knowledge, the worldly mind seeks to build walls of belief, habit, and fantasy around itself to protect itself from a dangerous and uncertain world, and then tries to assert itself from this position. Take a moment and think of who may be demonstrating such things to you at this moment that you would be aware of. So we have habits of being in deep ruts. Yeah. This is how we've come together, living in separation. Do you want to speak of this?
Well, you know, when I was a child, I grew up in a rather large family of 7 children, and I just remember in that era, my mother would comment here and there, and I love my mother, truly I do, and I think this is more a feature of the time that I was hearing through her, but she would say about someone, oh, she or he has such a nice personality. And I remember even hearing that then, a personality, a nice personality. Not that you have a bad personality or a nice personality necessarily, but a personality at all, you know? And this is such a predicament because we are so formed by the time we find something like an advanced curriculum like Steps to Knowledge. We are so formed. So I wrote this, Habits of Being in Deep Ruts. I mean, habits of being, a sense of ourselves, how we have come to know ourselves. And now we come upon, you know, a preparation that might have us question how we are. And not only question, but then begin to have to redirect how we are. You know, this is really something. Yeah, so in hearing Marshall, you know, I feel, how many of us are on track? Truly, I mean, we did find Steps to Knowledge, you know. With that's something. That is something. Chance, I don't know. But even that, I mean, to what extent can we penetrate these steps? It's a question. Let alone practice them. And, you know, so I know myself, I have, in a sense, 2 sets of practices, so to speak. Formal practices. Formal, which would be sitting down with my steps, reading my steps, considering my steps, stillness practice, active contemplation, inquiry, certain things I'm studying actively, one of which is knowledge. I have active special studies underway. This is formal practice. But then there's active practice, which is being out in the world and having to monitor actually how you are doing and how your mind is doing and what your mind is doing. You know, that's right. Things of this nature. If we employ the great practices out in the world, is that a formal practice or an active practice? That's rather active for me, which is if I'm really listening, if I'm really attempting to see something, you know, in the moment. Do I have the presence of mind to actually employ one of these great practices? Versus lapse into just complete, you know, fog. Preoccupation. Even when you're listening to someone, I mean, it's really something to really listen to what they're saying, where they may be coming from as they are communicating, what their condition is, okay? And at the same time, track how you're responding and what your mind is doing, and even in relation to what they're saying, let alone everything else is thinking. This is an active practice. Live, real time. Boots on the ground kind of thing. Yes. But it does. It's a tremendous attempt to try to override habit. My brother, was a student of a great teacher, and one of his teachings was about automaticity. The problem of automaticity. Personality firing away, reacting, responding. Meanwhile, where's knowledge? So.
Yeah. And what Patricia is talking about here is conscious practice. She's inserting this practice into her experience in both arenas, both the formal practice and the active practice, which we're all encouraged to do. The danger here is the unconscious practice that runs itself continuously without our awareness. And of course, without awareness, then we have no authority over it. We have no way to redirect it. We have no way to stop it. We have no way to insert a different kind of practice into our experience. We just keep responding in the predictable kinds of ways. And of course, people in their conversations with each other reinforce these reactions constantly. And even take delight in doing so. So, the consequence of all this is that these practices, which are long-standing, as well as the influences of the world and the persuasions of the world, have shaped and distorted you and your life.
Yeah.
To a very great degree. To the point where you really don't know who you are, why you are here, where you're going, what your life is about. And I'm talking about the human condition, not you personally, but you're really at sea, your life is haphazard, no real discernible direction. You're just going from thing to thing and hoping tomorrow will be better than yesterday. So Steps to Knowledge comes along and gives you a prime directive to re-engage with your natural state. But to do that, there is the fog of confusion. It's within you, within everyone. And the thing about fog is interesting. Fog is without distinction. It makes clarity very difficult to achieve about anything. Your circumstances become gray and indistinct. Your experience becomes gray and indistinct. It's as if the aliveness has gone out of you and you're living in a gray world. It's called the fog of confusion. So, since we're always practicing, and since we tend to practice the same things over and over again, we are being given an opportunity here to redirect our minds, our experience, and our lives. And it is a big task. Okay? And you're going to do this while you remain functional within the world. You're going to do this in such a way that every change you make, you have a chance to adapt to it and to restabilize around it. You're going to do this in such a way that your stability and clarity of mind grow in time and are not blown asunder because you went too far too fast, verging on the edge of insanity. So the steps are many, and the journey is long and careful. And you are not leading it.
But you need to participate in a real forthright manner with yourself.
Absolutely.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, really, you hear this phrase that I'm sure twings all of us, okay? Chord, pluck. Are you living the life you know you must live? And it's just like a twang. You know, I'm speaking of especially in that time in our lives before we found something like Steps to Knowledge, where we had no sense of, we may not have had a sense of anything. We don't even know what we're doing. We think we do. And then something like that crosses our path. Are you living the life you know you must lead? And we think, well, you know, as you first begin to engage, perhaps with the revelations, and you might see the people, place, and purpose moniker, the 3 Ps, people, place, and say, oh, it's about the people, oh, it's about the place, oh, it's about the purpose, right? Yes, but what about all this stuff? See, this is the work. When the new message calls us to do the work, you know, this is real. This is where studenthood becomes very unique to each of us, you know. And so I don't know how this is coming together for you. It may have to come apart first before it comes together. I don't know. And many of us have had the experience of our lives coming apart right before, in a sense, finding either steps to knowledge or some aspect of the teaching. You know, it just, the ground just isn't holding anymore. You know, you run out of roadway in the lives that we were living, let's say. And I know I'm not speaking for all of us, maybe just some. But it's just, and this is signature knowledge for me, the presence of knowledge. When the road runs out, you know, like I can look back on former times in my life where I had big plans, big personal plans. They looked real and 3D in my mind. And they had a lot of my personal intention behind them and everything. And my God, the road ran out. It just turned to nothing. And there you were. You know. So, and that's interesting, and that in a way is a gift, because there's a lot of our personality tied up with those kinds of machinations and plans. So when the road runs out, because knowledge isn't going in there, it's just not going there. You know, there's no aliveness there. Some of those features of our personality are left hanging there. And for some of them, it's time to leave them. It really can be confusing, intermittently confusing, because we are changing as we go. As we are following this innate indigenous force, which is the way knowledge actually tends to function. I mean, sometimes we may hear things, sometimes we may see things. This is all true. You know, these are emanations of this greater intelligence. Oh, my God. And so, we will leave parts of ourselves behind. It's very poignant. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to actually depart part of yourself, physically even. When you leave something behind, like the surgeon, you know, enters the operating room and you're on the table, and when you leave that operating room, you are not whole and complete anymore. It's really different. You know what I mean? Like, what? You know, okay, I've got, you know, now I've got, you know, 95% of myself to do what I have to do, maybe let's say. But yeah, it's poignant. It's poignant. And same thing for our personalities. They got us so far, but they're, you know,